So I'm here as Cathy Bettman. I'm Associate Professor, Deputy Dean of Counselling and Psychotherapy at the Cairnmillar Institute. But I'm also here in my role as a member of the NHCPE, have I got all the letters there, Research Committee, and also in my role as chair of the PACFA Research Committee. So I think you'd be far better off introducing yourself, because although I must admit I do know you and we have a bit of a history, you could do a much better job than I can.
Thank you. So my name's Megan Byes. I am currently completing my PhD at Western Sydney Uni's Translational Health Research Institute. My supervisors are Dr. Alex Hawkey, Dr. Samantha Ryan, and Professor Jane Usher. I'll tell you what my PhD is in a little moment, but more things about me is that I am a counsellor in private practice. I have my own business called Finding Space in Clovelly in Sydney, and I also teach at the University of Canberra, Master of Counselling.
Okay, so thank you. And I know you mentioned Professor Jane Usher. And so for me, it's wonderful to hear that, because I know how much you always look towards Jane's work in the area that you were so committed to.
Mm-hmm.
But before we even go there, I think your story is inspirational, because when I met you, you were in a place far removed from all these successes. So do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about that and where you began with your
Mm-hmm.
studies in counselling?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would love to take you back to high school, actually, because I feel like the way to describe where I got to and where I am now actually starts there. And so I actually didn't finish high school. I withdrew, I think, 3 months into year 12, so my HSC year, due to very intense anxiety, panic attack, trauma situations, horrible relationship, and really just could not continue in that environment whatsoever. And so I made the decision. Megan, who is the golden child, this, very bright, mature, beyond her years child and teenager, ducks of her school, is going to quit and is going to become a high school dropout. And I did. And so I had 2 years after that of just sort of milling around, going traveling, until I realized that a lot of other people in my year group were starting university, and that I always wanted to do that. And I always thought that I would be doing that. And so the only way I could get into university was doing the Notre Dame Tertiary's Pathway program, which is, to be honest, they really shouldn't have let me in, because it's usually for people that have still completed year 12 but just don't have the marks yet for a degree. And so they let me in without having completed year 12. And I did that for one semester. I then moved into a Bachelor of Communications at Notre Dame and did a year and a half of that. So I spent 2 years in total at Notre Dame. I then used those marks to get into a medical science degree at Sydney Uni, because I felt like I really wanted to be a gynecologist and obstetrician. So I was going to do the medical science degree, then I was going to do medicine, and then I was going to do my specialization. All of this was because what I really wanted, looking back, was to just sit in a room with someone and understand their story, understand what brought them here from a health perspective or any perspective, and do my best to try and help them. And so it was 2 years into a medical science degree when I realized what that actually was counselling, nothing to do with OBGYN stuff. I always had a really deep interest in women's health, and that's what I'm doing my PhD in now. So it has come full circle. I'm still there. But yeah, looking back, I never wanted to work in a hospital. I never wanted to do surgeries. I never wanted to be a doctor, a medical doctor. I wanted to be a counsellor. And so at that point, I was speaking with my friend who just got into a Master of Clinical Psychology at UNSW. And I was so envious that he got to start this. And he just sort of came over one day and we were talking about this idea after really letting go the idea of becoming a medical doctor. He said, what about counselling? Why don't you do a degree in counselling? And I was like, they don't have degrees in counselling. They have clinical psychology degrees. So that doesn't exist, Isaac. He's like, well, let's just have a look. Let's just like see what's out there. Like, I know that you don't want to do psychology. I know that you want to feel more holistic and more creative and more humanistic rather than what I'm doing, which is statistics, as in what Isaac's doing. So let's just see what's out there. And so got his computer out and we had a look and we found the Master of Counselling at Notre Dame. And I knew that I did not want to start a bachelor's degree again. I'd already started and not finished 2 bachelor's degrees. I'd already done 4 years of uni. I wanted to do a master's degree. And at that point, I had no faith in myself that I would be able to get into a master's degree without having completed a bachelor's degree. But I did. And I did that because I actually messaged one of the associate deans of Notre Dame who I was in classes with for the communications degree on Facebook. And he was like, let me put you in touch with Cathy. And I said, okay. And I had to really take myself back to that moment of being 18 and sitting in this office in Notre Dame, having moved to the city from the country, with having just been told by multiple other universities, sorry, you can't get in, like you can't even get into our transfer program because you still needed to have completed year 12, regardless of doing the HSC. Regardless of having an ATAR. And so I remember myself sitting there and thinking, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to be at uni, ever. I'm either going to have to do year 12 again, I'm going to have to re-enroll in high school, or I'm going to have to do some TAFE equivalent of finishing my HSC, which I really didn't want to do. But some beautiful angels at this university agreed to have me in their program. And the same thing happened 4 years later, where a lot of people worked very hard to work around my issue to allow me to get into the master's degree. And what that looked like was awarding me a Bachelor of Arts from the units that I did do at the communications degree and a whole bunch of elective units that were filled for my medical science degree. And then because Notre Dame has particular ethics and philosophy units that are compulsory to finish, I had to complete one of those units in the masters earlier than what I would usually have to do. And so all of that happened. I was awarded the degree and I got into the Masters of Counselling.
But you did work for that as well. It wasn't like they just said, oh, here you are, take your degree, off you go. And you've also got to give yourself credit for you hadn't just completed things, you had completed things excelling in them.
Yes, I have. So
the head of school, and we give her kudos, she saw your abilities and provided a gateway for you to do it with a lot of effort too on your part.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. Yeah, you are right. I won multiple awards at my time at Notre Dame in the undergrad, as at Sydney Uni, and with the grades that I got, all of that rolled into one, plus the interview type thing that I had with you, all helped to get me to that place. So I got in, and I remember my first lecture or tutorial, and I just was, I can't even like put words to that feeling of just how right it felt that I was doing this. And it's never not felt that way. I absolutely love what I do. And I recommend that degree and doing this type of work to anyone that's remotely interested in working in a mental health space, wholeheartedly.
So part of that degree meant 3 semesters of a research project,
Yes.
which you undertook with gusto, I might add. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, how you came up on your topic, which has led to your PhD, and what that whole process was like for you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely my favorite subjects of the entire degree. The amount that I learned across those 3 units, especially the first unit, was incredible. I had no idea what research meant before doing that. And now here I am, a PhD candidate, and I really owe that to these units that I did. So yes, we had to do an 18-month research project that would the output of which would be a journal article. And there was quite a few rules and restrictions around that. I really wanted to interview people from an eating disorder space, and that was immediately ruled out just from an ethics perspective. And so something else that I was really interested in, that I've always been interested in, is women's health, the menstrual cycle, how these hormonal shifts that carry women in a monthly basis affect their mental health, their lives, their social life, their work life, all of this. And it took some crafting, but I really wanted to come at this from it's interesting for me to like use the word recovery, but a perspective that wasn't sort of built in this idea of the menstrual cycle and the hormones that we go through are absolute hell and horror only. I wanted to have a really positive take on this. And I already knew from Jane Ussher's work that people can see PMS in a positive viewpoint. And there are many books, popular psychology books, written about this, about harnessing the powers of the menstrual cycle to your own advantage. Things like increased creativity, increased sex drive, spirituality, feeling attuned to the body, this idea of giving yourself rest every month at these particular phases, connection. All of these things exist rather than just this absolute hell and I'm angry at everyone, which is such the common narrative when it comes to anything to do with women, is that they're angry and hormonal. And so what my research project was taking this viewpoint from PMS, premenstrual syndrome, and looking at, can positive aspects exist? Can recovery exist? Can transformation of these symptoms exist for women and people with PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder? And I interviewed 7 people.
But I think it was actually interesting because I think we might have been a little bit worried that you would get enough participants in your study, and you put your advert out. It's like crazy at the number of people that put their hands up to do the study that you actually weren't able to get to because of the size of the project.
I think in the end, I had within the week that my advert was out before I took it down or like closed the recruitment phase, I had 67 people email me, and that wasn't even including the hundreds of comments on the platforms that I posted this advert on Instagram and Facebook groups. That sparked this huge discussion around the idea of recovery in PMDD and the idea of symptom transformation in PMDD. So it was a huge number. And
I
there was,
think we need to make it clear for some people watching that it was a qualitative study and not a quantitative. So
yeah,
therefore, that's why you were so restricted by numbers.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I only needed 5 people as well to interview, just in terms of the, um, what I needed for like those particular units, and I ended up having 7 out of the 67. So there were quite a few people that were really disappointed in not being able to be interviewed, that really wanted their voices to be heard, and I think that whole experience made us realize that there's a lot more happening here that needs to be looked at and addressed. People have a lot of things to say, and we feel that they deserve to say it. And having gone through that experience, with the recruitment and the advertising, it's like, okay, let's do it as a PhD. And so,
There were a lot of lessons learned as well. I remember how, you advertised for women who suffered from this condition and receiving feedback from who considered them a woman. And there was a whole lot of stuff around defining
yeah,
women and people suffering from this particular condition.
yeah. Yeah, to hold a lot of respect for people who might be non-binary, people who may have transitioned, but still um, go through these shifts from a female physiological perspective, to be able to give them a space as well, was really important. Something that I had never thought of before.
So can you very briefly give the viewers an idea of what came out of that research, just a tiny bit about the outcome?
So I analysed the data through the listening guide, which is a narrative feminist-based way of analysing transcript data. And that meant that I, as the researcher, had to listen to the nuances in the voice when I was doing these interviews. And what I mean by that is, I, as a practitioner, I like to see someone as not just a singular entity with a singular narrative, but rather a collection of multiple different parts of themselves that have different ideas and different opinions and are in debate and discourse with each other. And some of these parts come up and have very strong voices, and some of them are quite withdrawn and shy. And so in these interviews, I had to pick up on these different types of voices that were coming through. And so at the end, I found quite a few significant voices, and that's how I wrote up the results. So the first and main one was this huge voice of anger from these women. They're all identified as women, my participants. Particularly anger to the medical sphere that they were in. So that include severe dismissal, gaslighting, misinformation from various health practitioners that they have seen. One example that I think about regularly is that a person's gynecologist just looked at them in the first meeting and said, well, we can give you a hysterectomy or you're going to have to deal with this. And so there was no actual conversation with her about what her needs were, about her wants were, about what it was that was even happening to her at that time. And this was not uncommon throughout all of the participants. All of them bar one, spoke incredibly negatively about the health professionals that they've seen. The one that didn't had an incredibly knowledgeable GP who informed her about what PMDD was, what these symptoms looked like, how there's a secular aspect to it, that she wasn't just going crazy. And working with that GP and other people in her team that the GP linked her in with was what really helped her. So this voice of anger really strongly came through. Another really strong voice that came through was this idea of complete acceptance, and in that, this immense honoring of the body and understanding of what the body was asking them and what the body wanted and needed. And they were just going to be like, okay, I'm going to do it. If that means rest, I'm going to rest. If that means quitting the 6 a.m. HIIT class because it's giving me, too much of a stress response, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just lie down for a minute. I'm going to take this week off work. I'm going to leave this relationship. I'm going to link in with this particular person or remove myself from this particular person. So this real understanding of like, these symptoms that I'm experiencing are telling me something, and I'm going to listen to them. And I'm going to accept the fact that I need to be slower in my life, and I can't go as fast or intense as I thought I needed to. I'm going to take a moment for myself. So that this voice of acceptance. And then corresponding to that was this voice of resistance, which was, I refuse to have this as a disorder. I refused to see this as a pathology. I refuse to see this as something that is innately wrong with me. I'm going to do everything in my power to get my life the way that I want it to look. I don't want to see this as something that is this thing that someone's now told me I have, and I'm going to have to deal with for the rest of my life. And so those voices really came through in particular women who found a lot of agency in standing up to these health professionals and seeking ones that actually worked with them and heard their voice, making huge changes in their life, and then getting to the point of being like, yeah, my menstrual cycle and what I go through every single month is a superpower. It is something that I deeply honor. I remember like one of my participants had this conversation with her womb and thanked her womb and was grieving the amount of events that happened surrounding her womb and what that has led to in her life. And yeah, this huge resistance of this idea of PMDD as a pathology, that there are positive aspects to it, that there are lessons to it, that there are beautiful healing things to it. It's not just this big bad sticker of something's wrong with you now. That's what came out.
That resulted, obviously, and you've given some brief examples of the depth and the vividness of the data that you collected. And you completed that piece of research. What made you then decide that you were going to go further and I think it was not any further, it was taking this research to another level completely. So can you tell us sort of briefly, because I know you probably could go on forever, where you are up to and what you are hoping to achieve now with your PhD project, and congratulations for having it all signed, sealed, and developed, really.
Thank you. So the original idea of the PhD was just to do a bigger study with more participants, answering the same research questions that I did with the master's project. It was about 6 or so months into that when I was developing the proposal up with my supervisor, Denise, where to be honest, I'm not too sure. I just realized like I want to do something that's more hands-on. I want to do something that's not just interviewing people and then analyzing these single interviews and doing that 40 times and then there's my PhD. I wanted to do something more action-based. And what I transformed the project into was that I'm now actually developing a counselling program for people with PMDD, PMS, PME. Premenstrual change is the term that I've used, which I chose because premenstrual change encapsulates all of those positive elements in it as well. It's not a syndrome, it's not a disorder, but it also encapsulates the way that some people might choose to describe what they're experiencing. So I'm developing a counselling program for premenstrual change. I'm doing that using the voices of my participants to co-design this program. So I'm not just coming up with it myself and then rolling it out and saying that I'm the expert and then these people have to do what I'm telling them to do. I want my participants to be really involved in the design process of it. And so that involves doing interviews prior to building the program, asking questions about what people are looking for, what might work for them, what absolutely didn't work in the past, and how all of these can be tied into building this program. I'm then going to run the program across 6 sessions and then evaluate it from a qualitative perspective with the people that are my participants.
Okay. So again, very briefly, because I'm so conscious of keeping things succinct, what have been the challenges? And on the other hand, what have been the satisfying elements? And I know you're a very self-motivated person and you're constantly thinking about things in depth. So what have been the challenges and what have been the things that have urged you on?
The challenges, the main challenge is that I do too much in my life, and I'm just going to wait a minute. My internet dropped out.
Yeah, we dropped out a bit. There you go.
What was the last thing that I said?
You said that you have too many things on in your life.
Yeah. And that I don't actually have enough room in my brain to think in the way that I want to think about this PhD. But that's now changing. If I'm brave enough to make those changes and cut some other things out of my life so I can focus on the PhD more. That's been a big challenge. Another big challenge is this transferring across to a different university was a challenge in and of itself. And then working with new supervisors and actually almost dismantling the project and building it back up again with lots of different new ideas. And then after all those new ideas are put in and written up and having this like beautiful 20,000 word document ready to go, that again just get taken out entirely and we're back to square one and we're doing the original idea again. That was a challenge. I appreciated obviously the knowledge that my supervisors have brought into this and their ideas. At one point there was going to be multiple focus groups instead of one-to-one interviews. There was going to be a survey situation. So just wanting to really simplify everything and also having my voice first and foremost, accepting these people's brilliant ideas and honoring their knowledge, but also understanding like, I just want a simple project. I want a really like in-depth, beautiful, creative project. I don't need to do all this other stuff. And I think that's what us as a team realized in the end. Things that have kept me going, my sheer desire to finish a doctorate degree for no apparent reason other than to finish it. And my love for working creatively. The program that I'm designing has a lot of creative artistic elements in it. It's really based in parts work, which I really appreciate. There's going to be body mapping aspects to it. So, you know, really externalizing and looking at this life-size body map of a person and what, you know, artistic materials they want to put on this map to represent what they're going through in their life is going to be involved. Yeah, it's going to be quite creative. So I really enjoy that as well.
Do you hope to go into academia, or is that, well, you are in a sense because you are teaching, but do you hope to go further into academia, or I'm kind of wondering what's next with you because there are no limits.
I would love to work at a university in a bigger capacity than I do at the moment, just being a tutor. What that involves, I'm not too sure yet. I'm willing to accept job offers at this point. But again, that's me doing too much. Yeah. Okay.
Is there anything that I should have asked that I haven't asked that you want to throw in? I mean, when we were, you know, we are making these series of interviews, and you came into my mind because to me, you were such an inspirational story about, you know, your battles from HSC getting even into completing your counselling master's degree and now being so involved. And I think you're in a space of your PhD where it starts becoming murky and difficult and struggly, but you just got to keep that puffy hat at the end of it in your mind because, wow, it's the best feeling in the world. I think that's why you jumped into my head as being just the right person to talk about it. Is there anything I haven't asked that I should have asked?
What would I do differently?
Oh boy.
in terms of the PhD, what would I do differently? I would feel more grounded in myself and more authoritative on the project that I wanted to do, and understood that it was good enough, that things didn't have to be added in and get complicated, and just wanting to really simplify it. I hopefully would be forced to not work all the other jobs that I work. And I mean, I can't force myself. So I'm hoping that someone could just have said, like, you're actually not allowed to work more than X amount of hours so you can spend all this time on your PhD. I would go in person to the campus at Western Sydney Uni more, which I still can do because it's a beautiful campus and I love working with all the other people there. And I think, honestly, I would have taken a break to really think about whether or not I actually wanted to do this project. Or maybe there was a project that was calling me instead that I wanted to look into, rather than just jumping in because the opportunity was there. I don't know if I would even be doing this particular project if someone gave me that sort of forced break. There's so many other things that interest me. Yeah. But here we are.
So, but also I think what you're pointing out is that this journey, one learns so much more than just about your particular topic and the area of exploration. It's a journey. It has its ups and it has its downs, and it's a fantastic challenge, I guess, in so many different ways. So I just thank you so, so much for sharing so beautifully with us. And I'm sure everyone who watches this will be like me, wishing you all the very, very best. And frankly, because I've known you for a while, it's like a watch this space.
Yeah, I feel like that about myself as well. See what happens next. It'll surprise me.
And everyone else. Thank you again, Megan. I'm going to switch off the recording now.